Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Rafae Iqbal, and in today's show we'll be discussing 9th of May, the Black Day in the history of the country. Of course, everybody is aware of what transpired on 9th of May last year. There was an attack on the state institutions. The state institutions were maligned by propaganda spread on social media, and of course, along with that, the martyrs' memorials were also desecrated. Now, these martyrs, they died for the motherland. They died for our protection and our security. They laid down their lives for the defense of the motherland, and their desecration, the desecration of their memorials is a very shameful act indeed, and a very tragic moment in the history of the country, and is strongly condemned by all quarters of the civil society, and of course all the political leadership as well, and the state institutions as well. With regards to that, the theme of this day for 9th of May by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is Behurmati Unki Gawara Nahi Hone Denge Ab Dobara Nahi. With that, it says that the martyrs' memorials would not be tolerated to be desecrated like this, and such acts should not happen in the future. With regards to that, if we talk about what transpired, it is not just the army of one person or a segment of society. These are the armed forces of Pakistan, the armed forces of the country, and everyone has a responsibility to support and encourage the armed forces as they put in so much efforts for the defense of the motherland. With regards to that, the DG-ISPR Major General Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry also held a presser where he highlighted the tragic events of 9th of May, and he talked about how speedy justice and exemplary punishment should be awarded to those culprits involved in the 9th of May violence. There were also statements by the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, the Chief Minister Punjab Maryam Nawaz Sharif, and other political leadership of the country as well, in which they strongly condemned the events of 9th of May and said that it shouldn't have happened, and the culprits should be given exemplary punishment so that such acts do not happen in the future. In that regard, there were also statements by the Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee and the Chief of Army Staff, where they condemned the tragic events of 9th of May. And a ceremony was also held in this regard today to pay honor to the martyrs and their families, and to uphold the sanctity and the integrity of the armed forces of the country. We'll be discussing different elements of this tragic day. In the studios, we've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh pitafi. Along with that, we've been joined by geopolitical analyst Raja Faisal, and on Skype we have been joined by Brigadier retired Waqar Khan, who is a senior analyst. Thank you all for your time and being part of the conversation. I'll begin our conversation from Brigadier Waqar and ask him what he thinks regarding the whole scenario and the developments that have unfolded till now regarding the events of 9th of May, the presser from the DG-ISPR, and of course on today, the Black Day itself, the different statements that we heard from the political leaderships and as well as from other quarters and the civil society.
Watershed and rightly called Black Day. And before coming on to the particular question, I would like to just highlight how modern states, civilized states, protect their military personnel, garrisons, and due to I think main reason universally from east to west, from US to India to China and Middle East. I'll just read few points of American Uniform Code of Military Justice. Very interesting. It especially relates to civilians who can be tried under military jurisdiction, and it basically relates to protection of their soldiers, because in military the system allows protection of the soldier from physical harm, subversion, from let's say mutiny and all that, and then sabotage in case you are assaulting military installations. So it is very interesting that in case you assault a single soldier on duty, and it is let's say it harms the installation, you could land up into military police custody and see a very, very serious punishment of 20 years into the maximum, which is like life imprisonment. And then of course you are blacklisted from having any civil jobs, any businesses, transaction and travel. So it's very, very severe. Generally the narrative which was carved out by PTI, one was when they assaulted, and if you look at the overall design, there were a lot of calls from abroad, North America and Europe especially, which were basically echoed by their echo chambers, calling for targeting, certain residents of military officers, and then calls for army chief to step down. And this was also resonated by Zalmay Khalilzad and some of, I think, bewildered senators and congressmen from the US. So it means that basically, and then, of course, India joined in from different locations, social media. It was mainly to create, basically a revolution kind of situation, undermine the military chain of command, disrupt it, and then probably lead to a coup. And then came, response. Generally, people didn't join unless those activists. So it means that it was a proper, so it was not assault on a single soldier. It was an orchestrated assault. And somehow, when they failed, then they started denying it initially. Actually, Imran Khan said that since they arrested it, so there was a natural reaction. Initially, it was an acceptance, but later on, when they found that it is dangerous, so they started denying. And now they're trying to trivialize it. So that is very, very even if you look at today's social media, campaign by PTI, they're trying to trivialize. They have a, I would say, lashkar of, qualified lawyers, very senior lawyers, and you generally find out that's why they were put forward because they had to face it legally. So if you look at laws, right, by any country for protection of soldier and garrisons, the provisions are there in some form of the other, and you cannot, basically, let's say, get away with the accountability. And in case this precedence is allowed, that's why I think ISPR and today even Army Chief reiterated that in case we don't do accountability, then it becomes a precedence. One, it is violation of basic laws. You are getting into a jungle raj, and then any party could get up and start assaulting anything. Could be civilian or military installations, and tomorrow maybe somebody comes and attacks your frontline defenses because you don't take let's say these two tasks. So I think these are very, very important things, and one is, of course, law should take its course and let's see the results. The other is, in case they are they accept the mistake, then probably there could be some space. But I still feel the accountability should be there.
Farrukh, what's your views on how such events could be curbed in the future and how these could be limited? Of course, there's on one hand, there's the freedom of expression element, but on the other hand, there's the element of national security and protecting the integrity of the state institutions. How would you comment?
Right. Thank you very much, Rafae. I think that Brigadier Saab was being nice when he actually brought up the example of the US. Let me actually cite examples from our own region. Just imagine had something similar happened to India. Do you think that anybody who was actually out there creating all this fuss would have lived to tell the tale? I don't think so, right? This day, it is lucky that we are actually calling it a black day, not the greatest tragic day of this country's history, but those who were actually trying to instigate the kind of, or fomenting the kind of unrest they wanted to cause a civil war. So when you actually start inhaling your own propaganda, then you start actually believing that you can take on anything. And that is exactly what was on the mind of people who were actually instigating all this, right? And what surprises me, Rafae, is the total abdication of any kind of self-accountability on behalf of these people. They seem to have given up any semblance of having any kind of agency in the matter. I mean, that day, and even the next, that is tomorrow, that is the 10th. Remember the statement that was made when release was not taking place from the court. At that time, it was said that similar events can happen again. So are you telling me that all of a sudden, weeks after that, months after that, once you have started facing consequences, you are going to tell us that there was a grand conspiracy to involve you, when everybody there was actually standing at various sites and live streaming, with their insightful, speeches and asking people to come forward and do what the unspeakable things. And remember the pride that was being taken in WhatsApp groups regarding the kind of stoning or stone pelting that took place and so many other things. I mean, if you cannot see the consequences of your own actions, and I'm not saying that only I want to limit all of this to one political party. There could be any greater game internationally. Of course, there are powers that benefit from creating the kind of unrest that was there in the country.
Yes.
But why did you become such willing pawns in the game?
Very right, and definitely a question to ponder upon. Raja Faisal, what's your take on the whole scenario? Considering on the one end we saw that there's these in the Far East agendas. There was plans to instigate violence and create divides. And do you think it should be countered with giving a national essence and encouraging nationalism and patriotism, so the youth and the masses do not pay heed to such propaganda they see on social media?
Yeah, obviously, Rafae, if we talk about last year's unfortunate incident that took place last year, I still remember. I mean, them 2 days I spent confined in diplomatic enclave, and I was constantly sitting on Indian channels because hell of propaganda was being generated from their channels, and I made sure that I stay there because that's where I was getting internet, the full internet, and I kept on sitting on Indian channels only for one reason, because I knew that they will be, of course, doing their best to propagate more and more, so that the havoc which is already on the roads of Pakistan, that can trigger something and it can become a disaster. And that's what I was trying to convince everyone that this is not the case, because there were certain footages they were actually intentionally taking from Yemen, taking from some African countries, and portraying as if this is what is taking place in Pakistan, and that actually further fueled. But I kept on saying that this is a malicious sort of campaign which is going on from Indian side, and even there were bots who were sitting portraying as if they were that's PTI's sort of associated people, but they were simply doing that kind of propaganda, and people at large who were of course victimized of that propaganda, they did whatever they could on the roads. First of all, I of course hail from a family. We have tradition of serving Pakistan military. I am a grandson of a warrior who fought for this country. I am son of a warrior who fought for this country, and here I am sitting in front of you telling you that military, Pakistan Army and the other armed forces of Pakistan, they are dear to all of the households of this country. And one thing which was being forgotten last year, and that is that a man who has gone through the training of the military, training of the armed forces, these men, they are trained to shoot, trained to kill. They are not there to negotiate. They are not there to sit on the tables to negotiate. But that day they refrained. Because they knew on the roads the people who were getting mad, still they were their countrymen. And that is why leadership at that time, obviously Chief of the Army Staff, he gave the orders not to shoot, because eventually they are our countrymen, they are our own nationals. Definitely. And I think that is remarkable, that knowing that this havoc was being created, still Army did their best to, of course, calmly handle it. And I was amazed that seeing the way Army did that day, and of course no loss in terms of human loss we could see. And I think this is how it should be. Now, what's the way forward? The way forward is that all of these people, we have seen that in recent past there have been voices who were saying that military courts are not for civilians. Well, then civilians shouldn't be taking law into their hands, especially related to committing crimes related to going to military installments and torching and all of these things that took place that unfortunate day. Then of course military is involved, and this was kind of unfortunate incident. That was extraordinary situation in Pakistan, and of course if there is an extraordinary situation, it would require extraordinary measures to be taken. And that is why we know that military courts, they are up to speedy trials, and we have seen very recently few of the people who came out without getting into sort of any of the punishments, reason being their involvement was not there. And this is how, I mean, military courts are treating them, and they came out and they said they've been treated really well. Once for all of these incidents that took place last year, they need to be probed deeply, and whoever is, of course, part of this conspiracy against our dearly institutions, then they should be taken to the cleaners, and they should be, of course, punished for it once for all. Reason being, the example must be created here, so that in future, if somebody wants to commit this kind of hooliganism, then they can face the music, and they must know that if they do this thing, then of course they will be facing these kind of dire consequences. And I think this is how the countries should be run. I agree with Brigadier Waqar that of course this needs to be dealt with iron fist. Same goes out for Farrukh. He has said it right, that if it was some other country, of course there would have been consequences, I mean, that can't be even described. And of course, Pakistan military, Pakistan army, and the other institutions of our dear institutions, they abstained from using the force that day.
Thank you very much for clarifying, because for a moment I thought that same with Farrukh, that he should be dealt with iron hand as well. But after you have actually spoken to Brigadier Saab, I would like to comment on military courts and the courts themselves, right?
Definitely. Coming to the military courts and the legal aspect of that, Brigadier Waqar, we know the attack on state institutions, specifically the military installations, is a very grave and very serious matter, and it should be, it is one that falls within the ambit of national security. And considering that the DGISPR in his presser, he also mentioned that of a judicial committee to probe into the matter. How do you comment on that?
I think the issue of judicial commission only comes when there is something to be established. Now, this was one event which was being telecasted live on social media, especially, and a lot of, I would say, bravado from this party and their, let's say, sporting trolls from across the world. And then definitely there was an agenda. Now, I've already clarified that you can go and see the laws for any country like India. And I also go into further, details how the control social media, especially weaponization of the information, which is dangerous, which was done by PTI, that you weaponize the information and convert it into an assault. In India, there are 12 agencies from RAW, coming down to IB and, Enforcement Directorate, going down to, certain police from like Delhi and occupied Kashmir and I think Northeast. They are allowed, let's say you are in the street, to get hold of you, take out your mobile or laptop, take out the data in case they have any suspicion. And in case something is found, you will be charged, and maybe you are not visible for 1 year, especially if it relates to anti-state. So that's how the, states are controlling social media, basically for national security perspective. Like France, I think the cyber force is about 40,000, cyber police, sorry. Then UK, you have laws. We have seen what happened to Trumpsters who assaulted Capitol Hill. People had to, I think, from 10 to 22 years punishment for going and sitting on, chair of Nancy Pelosi, the speaker. So look at how they basically guard, any institution, whether it is judiciary. And I would say even a police post, you can't, assault it or abuse it. So that's why these laws are there, because they are the protectors and guardians of your country internally and externally. And in case somebody is allowed, then, there's no hold part, and then it can go. So I think Judicial Commission demand is, I would say, is rather absurd. And then even today we were in a program, people said, okay, we can start from 47. Basically, you can use the hindsight for learning. Like in a car, you cannot drive by looking at the hindsight. You have to finally look at the, front side and through your screen and move forward. Yes, hindsight, you are doing corrections and learning. So, but it can't be that, you can go back and start. And basically, it's trivializing 9th May. That's, I think, been the agenda of PTI and the trolls outside. Even if you look at the social media day before yesterday and today. So there's no, I think, they've not learned much. Now, when we come to the, implementation of these laws, so it has to be the policing system. When it relates to military garrison, it's the military, because anything that is in jurisdiction of military garrison cantonment then automatically falls into military's domain, because you are not only obstructing but you are assaulting. And if the precedence is set, then you can even go and attack, defense position, Lahore, Wagah, or on line of control for a protest, which can't be allowed. So one is, of course, the other I think is how the judiciary sees it. I think they should also look at what is happening around. There are laws like military courts are very much part of constitutional framework. They have been allowed, and Pakistan is fighting war on terror. Now imagine like TTP start demanding a judicial commission for any operations against them, and there are two parties, I would say, who have attacked military. One is TTP, the other is PTI. Maybe it was not maybe with a weapon system, but definitely with something different. Jalao Ghirao and going and burning. So it tantamounts to the same thing by a political party. Should this attitude be allowed? So I think law of the land should come into play. And I'm sure the appeal to judiciary, even by the Shohada families, because when you start vandalizing the monuments of Nishan-e-Haidar, of Sitara Jurat, so it means you are undermining the very spirit of Shahadat. Try to go, there are walls of, martyrs in US, UK, or in India, and try to put, a line of marker on that. And I think, will be arrested immediately in 5 minutes, and because you cannot basically degrade your martyrs or defenders. So they went to basically undermine. So if you look into the, I would say, focus or the narrative, larger narrative was to undermine military chain of command, undermine the concept of Shahadat. And if you look at PTI trolling, they even start talking about that we lost all the wars, despite the fact that asymmetrically we fought India. And look at India's record of fighting with China asymmetric, they suffered very bad. Yes, we lost one war, I acknowledge, but then we won rest of the 3 wars. But they've been, trying to build up this narrative. And I think Indians are very happy because they feel that whatever they could not do in last 70 years, the PTI has done it. So I think I'll, finish this point here, that it has to be made accountable. And I think the courts should realize the gravity of the situation, and justice should be delivered. So innocent will get relieved, and those who are perpetrators or, let's say, part of this thing should be punished.
Of course, the judicial system should be expedited in this case, and being a student of law, there are laws in place that protect the integrity of the different law enforcement agencies of the country. With regards to that, the armed forces are also the security agencies of the country. They are the military leadership of the country, and they too should be protected, and as such it is a matter of national security as well. Farrukh Pitafi, what's your views on what's your take on the military courts and how these cases should be expedited, so exemplary punishment can be awarded to those responsible in this vandalism?
Right. First of all, allow me to actually make a comment about martyrs and the monuments that are dedicated to them.
Please.
Remember that desecration, the attack on those monuments was not symbolic. It was symptomatic of something that is rotting in the society. At this moment, while we are speaking, Rafae, there are soldiers who are not only fighting terrorists, but laying down their lives. What kind of people would undermine the confidence or the support for such heroes, right? That is very important to understand. Yes. And there are other contexts here as well. For example, if you remember that when May 9th was happening, only a few weeks before that, whenever leader of this party actually used to go to courts, he would always be surrounded by a big mob, and there would always be a threat of some kind of attack if he is apprehended. That is one thing. Then his residence in Islamabad, there we kept on hearing that because other people cannot protect him, people are coming from TTP and they are going to be dedicating themselves to protecting him. So if a government, and at that time, there was a time when these guys were in government as well, they cut deals with TTP. If you are simultaneously trying to actually humanize the enemy and then attacking your own symbols, what are you telling me, right? There is a persistent thought here. Now, regarding military courts and regarding rule of law and regarding the overall situation, let me qualify a couple of things for the benefit of the audience.
Right.
As a person who firmly believes in rule of law, in the Ain of Pakistan, the constitution, and as a person who is actually essentially a libertarian, that means the state should be as small as possible, shouldn't be interfering with most of the things that a citizen does. What did you do that day? And who actually dropped ball? On one side, we are talking about the judiciary. Remember what was happening at that time at the judiciary? The kind of point scoring that was going on, the then Chief Justice, and the way casually when he was apprised of what has happened, the lightly he took the whole episode, the way he was actually treating it. You are practically undermining an institution's confidence in another institution, that is judiciary. That is why it was thought that if these guys are going to be sent to the regular courts, they will walk free. And then Brigadier Sahab was talking about social media. I believe in absolute. I'm actually a free speech absolutist. But the way every medium was perverted by these elements, the way it was actually, he said weaponized, I would say perverted. And it was used, again, there is a very simple equation here. When PTI was in opposition, their ranks or their power in social media kept on increasing. When they came in government, they were struggling against the same social media. And the opposition had some power. And once again, when they returned to opposition, once again, they became powerful. Now the question is there a possibility in the age of defensive offense that there is a permanent component, international component, that is sitting out there and adds their weight to anyone who is actively trying to confront the state? If that is the case, we are under attack, right? So these Johnnies actually practically undermined everything we believe in. That day, we could have been, had it been 90s, we would have been living under martial law by now. Yeah. If that did not happen, if the courts are still functioning, if there is a constitution which is functioning, if there is a parliament that is functioning, we should thank our lucky stars and ensure that if there is a serious misgiving by an institution, we should use whatever means possible to actually address those concerns. And if that military courts solve it, why not? Right. All these conspiracy theories are just meant to actually keep on hiding your own responsibility, right? If I do something wrong and then I'm caught, I will say Faisal did it, I did not. Right? This is what is happening. Do you want to further add to this kind of manipulation? If not, then we'll have to work with all institutions and find a way to address their concerns.
Well, considering the polarization that's already in the society at the moment, I think these cases should be expedited at the most. Right, Faisal, what's your take? As we talked about social media, we talked about how it's being weaponized. Do you think the state should provide a counter, because there are certain segments that are using this as a way to disseminate their propaganda? Do you think it should be countered with awareness and the actual truth, and so the people can know what's the propaganda and what the truth is, and how can the social media being used as a weapon be curbed in the future?
Yeah. Rafae, first of all, I would agree with Farrukh when, of course, he highlighted that, if we see how social media works and how it is being controlled, of course, there are algorithms, and them algorithms are set with a particular intention, and that is what has been, seen in the case of Pakistan. He has rightly pointed out that at that time when, of course, PTI was ruling the country, they were worried about, the voices from the other side, the other counters, and of course, it can be presumed that at that time, them voices were, seen more and more often because of them algorithms, and when of course they took the opposition seats and they went towards the other side, their voices actually became louder and louder. You know, so this is you know, there is too much weight in this argument, and I agree with Farrukh, and I think that is how this is being conducted, and we shouldn't be forgetting that there were you know, Cambridge Analytica kind of findings in past where the you know, all of these tactics, they were being used for election manipulations and for you know, political manipulations, and to some extent of course you know, inciting violence in certain African countries and certain you know, countries elsewhere in Latin America as well. And there are records of that this was being conducted, and of course we know that Cambridge Analytica is kind of you know, an organization that was discreetly and clandestinely working in them countries, and they had their own ways to work, and of course they are very well interlinked with you know, all of these social media providers, and this is what they get paid for, and they were getting paid for such services, and they are the ones who were you know, paying the other social media providers to of course fix the algorithms. And maybe in this case, in Pakistan's case, this must be the case, and to me I think this is a genuine argument, and this should be probed as well. Coming to you know, how I mean these people should be dealt with, well, you know, the institutions are having footages, the institutions are having relevant evidences, and them evidences should be utilized at the best of the capacity, and we have the right forces, we have the right intelligence agencies who are already working on it, and I think there should be a mechanism, a coordination between and amongst all of the you know, institutions, and that collaboration should be of course you know, applied here, and all of the people who have been somehow you know, attached to it, and even those who've been you know, somehow associated with the TTP and they were present in Islamabad, capital city of Pakistan, they should be of course you know, taken to cleaners, and they should be captured, and they should be punished for that, because no room must be left in terms of you know, speedy justice, and Pakistan needs the justice. Why I say Pakistan? Because if we talk about you know, all of these installments, I mean I've been hearing that these were you know, military installments, and they belong to army, and they belong to Air Force, and they belong to Navy. I believe they belong to whole Pakistan. Reason being, we are proud of our institutions, we are proud of our army, we are proud of our Air Force and Navy, and all of the institutions that are working day and night to make this Pakistan secure, and we own them. They are from amongst us, and that is why, and by the way, that is my money, your money, and everyone else's money in Pakistan, because this is their property, and we must own it, and that is why I want the justice to be delivered.
Right. Very quickly, before you go to Brigadier Sahab, I just wanted to clarify the Cambridge Analytica aspect, because that body is now defunct. It was shuttered. But you know, it was harvesting data through an app that it had installed in Facebook, right? Only a game that was installed. But apart from data harvesting, the algorithms are simple. All you need is more numbers, right? The problem is that when you are sitting in Pakistan, and no matter how affluent you are, you can spend only so much money. When you are in India or any other country which is far bigger and richer, it is very easy to you know, hire more people and gate crash the system, so that it automatically is dominated by their voices or the voices they actually promote. That's all.
Brigadier Waqar, what's your take, and what are your views, considering that it's time of data? We see that the data does amount to the algorithms. It does create trends. It does create the whole narratives and propagandas that are being used in the context of social media to disseminate their nefarious designs. With that, how would the state of Pakistan, how would a country curb such nefarious designs and such data that they accumulate from and then they manipulate through social media to confuse the masses at large?
Yeah, I think social and digital media are now crossing new frontiers, and that's the reality. I think the challenge being faced by most of the modern nations, developed or developing. If you look at Cambridge Analytica, they were also, not only they were using algorithms and, let's say some applications, they were, groups of people who were doing micro targeting. For instance, what were so from Facebook, they would collect the data, what was your, let's say, orientation, whether it was reading books or moving. And then they were communicating the, message in a very subtle manner. And probably this is happening all around. If Cambridge Analytica has become defunct, there must be some other organization. If you look at US prison program or the Chinese program, the Russians or the advanced nations, even the Iranians, they're very good in social media. You've seen now social media power of the Palestinians, despite they are being, bombarded. They are able to communicate, and they brought a revolution in American academia and the Western academia. So this is the reality. Now it comes to how does the state, basically deal with it. One, of course, is awareness campaign. If you look at the youth spending, I go to university, generally ask the students how much time they spend on social media or digital media. And I'm at time horrified, people saying 10 to 12 hours. But the average is about 5 to 6 hours. So when do you start work? So it's creating bewilderment. So one is awareness. The other is, of course, laws. As you said, like PICA itself is a very strong law, provided it is, and then comes your judicial system who's to try it. It's almost based on 1880s, mind you, the British India Act or the British India law of that time, law of the land. And generally, it's the same Qanun-e-Shahadat or law of evidence. It's become very, very difficult to apply that. So I think the judiciary has to also update. I'm sure they are doing it. Update themselves on the new challenges. And then, of course, is post-truth, which is, I think, the most dangerous phenomenon, but that's where we are living. That you don't agree based on, an argument based on facts and reality. You do it because of your emotions. For instance, somebody belongs to a particular party. Their leader may do anything. Like Trumpster will remain a Trumpster. A Bhakt will remain a Moody follower. And same, I'll not name who follows what in Pakistan. But so it's becoming more like, cult political, following. So that is, again, a challenge. But I still feel that the nations have done, like you look at Russia, look at Middle East, you look at Turkey. So there are, cyber monitoring systems and then awareness campaigns. And then youth has to be told that, okay, political point scoring is there, but then, of course, you have to become, a positive member of the society. And the other thing, important thing is, I think at times we forget in this discussion on 9th May, that Pakistan is moving forward, irrespective of, generally the impression is probably that's over PTI and Imran Khan and otherwise will not move. It is moving forward. It's basically economic challenges. Even PTI was facing it when they were in power. Like She said that maybe we will not get re-elected. So it's basically falls down to economy. We have now Saudi investment coming, and remember PTI tried to undermine it through a fake news that, God forbid, they were involved their regime change. Like Shahzad Akbar saying of the acid attack, and then US UK court saying no, it's false. So despite, I would say, despite PTI or their, I would say, cult folly, Pakistan will move forward. We have Recordec, which is coming after 2 years. Inshallah, will start production. And the moment Pakistan economy starts, like inflation is now generally, gradually reducing, starts, and you have relief for the people of Pakistan, I think PTI will be left behind until they realize that you have to, become part of the mainstream. They already have a government in KP. They should deliver. In Punjab, you have another party in Sindh. So I think they should compete for good governance, for giving relief to people. Pakistan, inshallah, will move forward despite these challenges. And I think we have the capacity and the will to do it.
Pakistan will move forward, of course, and we hope that the days come quick and Pakistan comes to its glory that is well-deserved, of course, and reaches its full potential. With that, Brigadier Retired Waqar Khan, Senior Analyst, thank you for your time and sharing your views on and being part of the show. It was lovely having you. Moving on to Farrukh Pitafi, what's your views regarding, we were talking about social media and how these data, how it's being analyzed and how it's being weaponized and used, and trends get created, and the propaganda gets disseminated in a very hasty manner that way.
Right.
How could it be countered in your views?
Right. I'm grateful that Brigadier Saab actually brought up the issue of the micro-targeting. I think that was the whole deal in 2016 US elections, right? But the amazing thing, and this shows you how basic human nature is, that app that was used on Facebook to harvest data actually managed to create psychological profiles out of only 8 or 9 variables. There were 6 or 7 questions, yes or no questions. You had to answer that in a game playing way. Okay. And then they had your entire mental profile to actually target you and find a way how to actually push your buttons. Now, Brigadier Saab was talking about many other countries, China, Russia, Iran, umpteen other countries. Let me remind everybody, there is a elephant in the room called RAW, and that is India's intelligence agency. It is thought to be very powerful, and it was given a special mandate to actively undermine not only BRI, but also Pakistan's security.
Yes.
On the other side, remember that it was happening on 9th of May, and then it continued till 10th of May, right?
Yes.
During daytime on 10th May, they actually burned down Peshawar's radio station, and that continued that way. Astoundingly, if you look at it, what was happening in India on that day? On 10th last year, there was an election going on in Karnataka, a state which is very important for Modi ji. And at that time, what I felt was that there was a message to their masses, because their media was not covering their elections. It was covering our mayhem. And the whole story was, and I'm glad that Faisal brought up, because he was one of the defenders on those channels. But the purpose at that time was vote for us, because we can do these unspeakable things to Pakistan.
True.
If that is so, just think what was happening on that day. I mean, this country could have gone anywhere.
Yes.
Lucky that our security actually prevailed. But again, my humble submission is, when it comes to social media is only a light and shadow show, right? You can bend light, you can influence certain impressionable minds, but it is actually what happens on the ground that people come out and start doing these stupid things that matters more. So, of course, regarding social media, I would say that we should be rededicating more resources to fight propaganda with the truth. But on the other side, when it comes to policing and ensuring that these things don't happen, a political party is so emboldened that it thinks that it can get away with anything. Why would that happen? There are certain systemic cultural issues involved, right, which were allowed to take place. I just mentioned a former Chief Justice of Pakistan,
Yes.
who was treating the head of that party that was actually creating mayhem, because he was apprehended, as if he was house guest, and he ensured that he was treated like a house guest, a VVIP. A Mercedes was actually called in so that he can be transported. With that kind of a situation, do you think that institutions are going to trust any other institution?
Well, of course, the law should have no blue-eyed babies in his eyes. Raja Faisal, what's your concluding remarks? As Pakistan is moving forward, how can these wounds be healed? How can the youth and the masses be, how can they be made aware of the truths and realities, and also play their part in making the country heal now?
Yeah, obviously, Rafae, if we talk about, of course, cyber spying and cyber policing, this needs to be increased, number one. And number two, there are voices and chanting around us saying that freedom of expression and freedom of speech should be awarded to everyone, and it's a basic right of everyone. Well, I just want to say that freedom of speech and freedom of expression, it is their right, but they don't have any right to of course, being someone who's inciting the violence. That shouldn't lead towards incitement to violence, because if they do so, then they are accomplice in the crime. And you being a lawyer, you know it very well, that if there is a crime that is committed, anyone who's accomplice to that crime in any capacity, they are liable to be, of course, facing the trial and, of course, facing the justice. And that's how the countries must be run. And, to me, I think when it comes to cyber policing and when it comes to cyber security of Pakistan, it needs to be further enhanced, and it needs to be, further promoted in Pakistan, because that's how in a cyber occupied world, coming world, we can survive. Otherwise, as Farrukh has earlier mentioned about how enemy sort of agencies, they are looking for the ways to, of course, create an havoc in Pakistan. So, of course, we need to be extra cautious, number one. And number two, to all of the elders of this nation, anywhere they are sitting, it's my request that there are certain boundaries and certain limits that are expected from every one of them, so that the youth that is watching them, the ones who are watching them, deep down they are looking at how things are moving, so they can be given a message that all of the elders, they are actually taking this country ahead. And as Brigadier Waqar earlier mentioned about Pakistan facing turmoil in terms of political instability and economic instability, and at the same time Pakistan trying its best to cope with all of the problems and struggles which are being faced by Pakistan, I think it's time that is the move forward way, and of course steer the country out of these problems.
By the way, I just wanted to add, because Faisal actually twice mentioned elders. So I thought that when we talk about India and BJP, we talk about WhatsApp University. There are micro WhatsApp universities in this country as well, and you have to be aware of them and find a way to solve that problem.
Very true. Farrukh Pitafi, senior analyst, and Raja Faisal, geopolitical analyst. Thank you both for joining us and being part of the conversation. Of course, we deliberated on some very important aspects today regarding social media and the tragic events of 9th of May. Of course, accountability is the need of the hour, and responsibility in these times of internet and modern technologies. Everyone needs to be responsible and think what part they are playing in this state of internet and quick dissemination of information and news. With that, we'll conclude today's show, but we'll also salute the country's martyrs. See you same time tomorrow. Till then, take care.